Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's afternoon. It's 1:45. That constitutes afternoon. So, before we get started, who here has been to, this is your third session, has been to all of them? Okay, awesome. So here's what I'm going to do. If you have been to all three, now I'm trusting you're going to tell the truth. If you've been to all three, this is going to be passed around to each table. I need your name written and printed so that I can read it, because we'll make certificates of completion for everyone who's gone to all three sessions. And then I will send them here to the pastor and he will distribute them. Okay? So make sure that it's printed in a way that I can read it. Because if it comes out misspelled, it was only because I couldn't read your writing. Okay, I'm going to start over here and just fill that out. We need more? They're over here.
Just one more.
Does everyone have their books?
No.
That's why I'm holding books. Make sure you get a book. I didn't bring any. They weren't printed. So try and send some to Pastor. Okay? Okay, so before everyone starts reading ahead in the books, if you have done this with me, you know the secret to the book is that everything that appears on the screen is in the book. Okay? So if you like to take notes, there are spaces for notes, but you never have to take notes on what's on the screen. It's in the book. Okay? So, all right. So we are going to conclude our time together with 2 sessions today. We should be done, depending on questions and stuff, by about 4 o'clock. If that sounds okay to y'all. If not, that's when we're going to be done. There's not much I can do about it. So, as you see, our first session is on everybody's favorite. Who likes confrontation? Raise your hand if you enjoy confrontation. He's like, Are you kind of confrontational?
Depending on the subject. Very confrontational.
Come on now. You said you had that sound system under control back there. He did. So, as you notice up there, we have, the title is Confrontation and Crucial Conversations. From this point on, though you may see the word confrontation, we're going to start thinking from a different perspective, okay? From the idea of confrontation, which most people will think of confrontation in a negative way, right? If I have to have a confrontation or I confront someone, it's negative. Crucial conversation is something totally different, and we're going to explore that and why it's important. So, George Bernard Shaw said this, and I love this quote. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. Right? Think about that. Many times, this idea of having to have a crucial conversation or confrontation has stemmed out of a breakdown in our ability to communicate effectively with other people. Okay? Y'all can nod your head sometimes and let me know that you're alive. I know it's hard after eating. Oh, and I failed to mention that if you start feeling sleepy, get up and walk around the back. It's fine. I have no problem with that. What happened? Did you change your mind? All right. In a study of 25,000 people across dozens of organizations, the authors of the book, Crucial Conversations, learned what set top leaders apart from everybody else. It was simply this, that they were the best at stepping up to their coworkers, their colleagues, the people that they were engaged in, even their bosses, if you can believe that, and holding them accountable. Because Crucial Conversations, a big part of that is about accountability. And accountability is a positive thing, not a negative thing. Can you say yes to that? Yeah. Right? Do you agree with that? Having someone to help hold you accountable helps us be better people. Right? I mean, think about this. If you believe that there is a God in heaven, you believe in Jesus, then you have the ultimate accountability partner. Right? Because we want to do right by God so that we can stand in front of Jesus at the end and hear what? Well done, good and faithful servant. The ultimate accountability. Crucial conversation is a discussion between two or more people, so you can't have a crucial conversation with yourself. I guess you could, but technically, no. It is where stakes are high. So if Pastor, if you and I are talking about football or something, that's not a crucial conversation. Okay? Stakes are high, opinions vary. That's important. Okay? Opinions vary. That means you believe something, I believe something. And we're holding on to it. And typically, in a crucial conversation, emotions are going to flare up because there's a lot of buy-in by each person. It's something that's very important to me. If it wasn't, I wouldn't care. And we probably wouldn't even have that dialogue. Right? What is confrontation? In Crucial Conversations, it says this. To confront means to hold someone accountable. What does it say? Face to face. Say that again? So here's one of the key things you want to walk away with today is that we never have a crucial conversation or any type of confrontation any other way than face to face. We don't do it via social media. Right? We try and avoid the telephone, but sometimes that's just the way it is. And to be honest with you, if I had to choose between the telephone and FaceTime, I would FaceTime. Because at least I can see them. You want to be able to look at that person when we're having that crucial conversation. When confrontation is handled well, here we go, the problem is resolved and the relationship benefits. Now here's the next really important thing. That we are going to think about this being crucial conversations or confrontation in the context of being redemptive. Now, do you understand what I mean? Being redemptive. It's always about restoring relationship. We never enter into crucial conversation or confrontation with the idea of saying, well, I only did this to prove you were wrong and I was right. That's not what this is about. This is about redeeming the relationship, always. Always managing it in such a way that when we walk away from whatever this was, the relationship holds strong. Okay? We don't want to think that if I have to have a confrontation with you, there's a good chance that when it's done, you and I will never speak again. Many people think of it in those terms, but that's not how we want to approach this. And hopefully, at the end of our session, now let's be realistic, in 50 minutes to an hour, I can't make you professionals in crucial conversation or confrontation. But what I hope I can do is set you on a path that says, over time, I can develop based on these ideas. Okay? And I'm going to there's some books that are recommended at the very end of this also. if this is an area that you feel like you would like to develop. Why don't we confront? Biggest reason is fear. Okay? Fear of what? Fear of the outcome. Doesn't that make sense? I'm afraid that in the context, if I have to confront you about what's going on, there's a million ways you could respond. And a lot of them aren't good. Right? So fear of outcome, fear of losing control. Most people do not like the idea that a situation is going to get out of their control. Would you agree with that? Yeah. And then, of course, negative emotions. Every time I have to talk with Pastor, he gets mad. And so I'd rather just not talk to him. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Not that you would get mad. So why don't we confront? Many people associate confrontation with the emotion of anger. This is why at the beginning, if I say how many people like confrontation, most people don't raise their hand, because confrontation is connected to some heavy emotions. Typically, someone's getting angry. If I have to confront that person, there's a good chance they're going to blow up. But then, as you see, when confrontation is done correctly, anger is not, I repeat, not part of the equation. So I want you to believe that there is ways and techniques that we can have those crucial conversations with somebody that nobody is blowing up, nobody is getting angry. We're talking in a way that helps us to work through whatever this is that we have to work through. Okay? Why learn to confront? Well, we're going to face confrontation innumerable times. If you haven't been involved in a confrontation, stick around. At some point you will, for sure. Outcome will determine success or failure, not just in the workplace, but in our relationships and really in our ministries as well. If in our relationships we don't develop the skill, and I say skill, of having crucial conversations, not being afraid to bring up things that are uncomfortable and then manage the conversation in such a way that it's not about somebody winning, it's about us. Remember, I said this in the sermon, and this ties in really well. It's not about me, it's about we. And I wasn't kidding that that's something that my wife and I live by. That, 25 years of marriage, in the first year we had one, what I would call, major argument, and haven't had anything since then. We don't fight, we don't argue. We don't. Do we disagree? Of course. But our disagreements never accelerate beyond us being able to say, is it me or we? And if it's me trying to get my way, then guess what? I need to go take a time out. So the inevitability that there will be confrontation makes it a fundamental skill. And remember, skill. I've used that word for those of you, this is your first time. For those of you that have been here, I use skill a lot because skill is something that can be learned. Okay? Being able to do confrontation or crucial conversations is not a gift or a talent. It's not something you're born with. Being able to do this in a right way is a skill that we develop. Okay? You with me? Okay. Don't worry about the kids. All right. Why learn to confront? Continuing, when we face confrontation, we can do one of three things. Here we go. We can avoid it, as many people do. Can I just candidly share with you that at one time I took over pastoring a church that the pastor before me was absolutely non-confrontational, would not confront anyone about anything, and as a result, all of the elders of the church managed all confrontation, all issues, they managed it. When I came into the church and I said, whoa, wait a minute, that's not how we do it, okay? I'm going to teach you some things about confrontation that stem around, if you see it, you should be the one to deal with it. And we're going to explain that and unpack that in just a bit. So we can avoid the confrontation, we can face it and handle it poorly, or ideally, we face it and we handle it well, right? Which is what we want to be able to do. So again, confrontation is a skill, which means even if you're no good at it, given the right information and practice and patience, you can be able to do it. It means that when learned and practiced appropriately, and that's important. Do you guys remember what we said about practice last time I was here? Anybody? Right, what's the old saying about practice? Practice makes perfect. And do you remember what I said? That's totally wrong. Perfect practice makes perfect. Right? If practice makes perfect, then I can practice it wrong, and it only means I'm going to do it wrong perfectly. Right? So perfect practice. That's why we say it means when learned and practiced appropriately or rightly, confrontation can become as natural and easy as any other skill-based activity. Now I will say, and this will come up again, that when we talked about affirmation last time, one of the things that was important to understand is that if you grow up in a home where affirmation is not present and you don't relate to it, it's something that's much harder for you, for me, because affirmation didn't exist in my growing up. It's something that took me many years as an adult to begin to understand. And the same thing with being able to have crucial conversations or confrontation. If you grew up in a home where people just blew up and screamed and yelled, it's more difficult to learn how to manage this in the right way. But just because something's more difficult doesn't mean you can't do it. Right? Because it is a skill. All right. Confrontation done correctly. It is a growth and accountability tool that heals and benefits relationships. Remember, we're thinking about this crucial conversation or confrontation in the context of being redemptive, right? So if it is a growth and accountability tool that heals and benefits relationships, so in every church that I've ever pastored, when I first sit down with the elders of my church, I would always tell them that I always expect you to come to me if I've done something wrong, to hold me accountable. I expect that of you. Just like I would not hold back and go to you if there was an issue. I'm not going to let it sit. We're going to sit down, and as the Bible says, come let us reason together. Let's sit down over a cup of tea, coffee, or juice, whatever is your pleasure, and let's talk this through so that it doesn't become a hindrance in our relationship or our ministry. Okay? And when we think of this in context of like our family life, if we say the family is more important, then it is a growth and accountability tool, because if I do something wrong, I expect you, brother, to say, Alex, we need to talk. I have something I want to share with you. And I know that your heart is right and your intention is right. Well, am I going to grow from that? Yeah, I hope so. My goal is to be the best me I can be for Jesus and for the people around me. That means I have to be willing to receive correction, however that looks and whatever that turns. And most of the time when we think of correcting people, we think of it in terms of confrontation, because we think people are going to get upset. All right? Okay. The most important rule, here we go. Most important rule of confrontation, bar none. Never, ever, 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 as much as we can say never, ever, under any circumstances, confront when you are angry. Okay? Absolutely. Cardinal sin. Worst thing you could ever do. It's like for those that are parents, the worst thing you can ever do is discipline your children when you're angry. Because all they get is that you're angry. They don't get that they did something wrong and they need to be coached through what was wrong, you know? Or you need to have a crucial conversation with them. Some people say a come to Jesus meeting, right? But if you do it angry, all they're going to do is connect with the anger. On top of that, I'm going to take you through some steps of how we prepare to have a crucial conversation in a way that always turns out redemptive. And I'm telling you, if you go into it angry, it's just going to blow up. It is the precursor to a fight or an argument. Okay? So when we're talking about anger, let's take a moment, and I know that different cultures interpret this differently, so bear with me. That there's 3 stages that people go through to get what I would call a fight, okay, between 2 people. I'm not talking about fists, right? I'm talking about verbal, right? So, and it starts with this premise that I believe something and you believe something very strongly. As we begin to discuss, the emotions get higher. My desire to enforce my belief on you moves it from an argument at the point that now I am becoming abusive and loud, and I am trying to impose my opinion upon you. To me, that's a fight. Okay? When we confront, when we're angry, we're setting the stage for it to move from a discussion past an argument to a fight. Where now all that matters is that I'm right. Nothing else matters, even if I'm completely wrong. Does that make sense? Yeah, say you understand, but it doesn't make sense that people do that, but that's common. That's what happens. So we don't confront when we're angry, and we're going to talk more about this. Listen to this quote. Speak when you are angry and you will make the best speech you will ever regret. Right? Speak when you are angry and you will make the best speech you will ever regret. Yeah, we'll take questions as we go. If you have a question.
Yeah, no, so this part, confronting when you're angry, that's something that I've always thought of.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times what happens to me is that I'm like, okay, I'll wait till I'm not angry. But then when I'm not angry, the desire or the importance of confronting that person just completely goes away.
Right.
And then I think that's wrong, but what should we do then?
So hold on to that question. Wait till we get to the steps of what we do to prepare, and let's think about that as we go through it, okay? Which, here we are. So I'm going to flip ahead. This kind of lays it out. You have it in your book, but we're going to break these things down rather than looking at it this way. So we have a before, and that's broken into some parts. So follow along with me, and the best way to do this is I'm going to paint a fictional story, and we're going to analyze this story along the way. Okay? You with me? Okay. So here's the story. I get a call from an elder that says, Brother Smith was supposed to be at the church at 9 o'clock to open the doors for 9:30 Sabbath school, and we're sitting here and there's nobody here, and we don't have a key. We don't know where Brother Smith is. About 20 minutes later, Brother Smith shows up, unlocks the door, blah, blah, blah. I get a call, again, from the elder telling me this has happened. Pastor, you need to talk to him. All right, so we're going to see this along the way, but the first thing is that if I didn't see it, I can't confront it. I'm not the one that should be confronting. So how do I handle it? I say, okay, I'm not going to show up at church now and grab Brother Smith on Sabbath to the side and say, dude, what are you doing? How come you didn't show up? You were late. No. Next week I'm going to show up and I'm going to look to see, has Brother Smith shown up? So let's say, for argument's sake, he doesn't show up. So let's stop right there in this part of the story, and I have to think about myself, because the first thing in successful confrontation is to work on me first, my story. What does that mean? Is how I'm interpreting the scenario true or based on how I understand things. What do I mean by that? So Brother Smith has showed up late. Now, my heritage, as I've mentioned before to you, is half of it is German, the other half is Italian. I was raised in a family with my father saying that if you are late, it is an absolute sign of disrespect. You are never late for any reason. If someone says you're supposed to be somewhere at 9 o'clock, you better be there 10 minutes early. Because if you're on time, you're late. That's what I grew up with. That's my filter. So as soon as I'm dealing with somebody who's late, does my filter affect how I might handle that scenario? Yeah, of course it does. Might I get way more upset than someone else? So here's how my filter works in that. When I first started pastoring at Plantation, I don't have a problem telling this story that way. When I first started pastoring at Plantation, my first elders meeting, I call an elders meeting, it's for Tuesday night at 7:30. Okay? I show up at the office and I open up my office and I get things copied and ready to go. I'm there by like 10 after 7 and I'm expecting at 7:30 I have everything laid out for the elders to be there. And at 7:30 nobody's there. They haven't showed up yet. Okay? And can I tell you, my first thought is that this is an absolute show of disrespect to the pastor. This is the first thing I'm sitting there, day one, minute one, and I'm getting upset. All right? About 10 minutes later, one of the elders shows up. And I'm like, was there confusion? Did somehow, I don't understand. And he's looking at me like, what? And it's the first time I ever heard this phrase, and some of you are going to laugh about it. Pastor, soon come. Just relax. Y'all ever heard soon come? Yes. Y'all know what soon come means, right? It's kind of like him saying, dude, just relax. Take a chill. Okay? We're going to get here. It's like no rush. Okay? Can I tell you that everyone didn't show up till almost 8 o'clock? And my Germanic heritage made it brutal. Work on me first. Before I could ever have a confrontation with them, I've got to be honest. I've got to sit down and think with myself. Is my filter, is who I am, is how I'm seeing that scenario affecting that's how I see that scenario? Am I making it bigger than it really is? All these questions I have to be honest about. So I'm going to prepare for the confrontation. Now understand that once you get this stuff can happen kind of fast. This isn't like you're not going to spend 3 days and 3 nights trying to prepare. But pray about the issue that you need to confront. I don't want this to go by subtly that this is singular, not plural. Pray about the issue, singular. We never confront multiple issues because nobody can handle that. You know what it's like when someone starts bringing out, you did this and you did this and you like throw up your hands and go, what's the point here? Forget it. You confront one thing at a time. Okay? In one conversation. Choose what, why, and if. What is it that I have to confront? Why? And if is something that's going to come up several times. If I do, what? So let's go back to our story with Brother Smith, right? So the what, why, and if. What am I going to confront? Well, what I'm going to confront is the fact that it was my understanding that you were supposed to be there at 9. You weren't. Why? Okay, what's the issue? But then the if is, I have to be willing that Brother Smith is going to drop the church keys in my hand and say, fine, you do it. Right? That's the possibility if I'm having that conversation. Decide what I want to confront. But for me to decide what I want to confront, I have to have gone there and seen him show up, because I can't confront if I haven't seen it. Ask, what would a reasonable person do? What does it mean to be reasonable? Anybody? Anyone have an idea? Reasonable. What does it mean if I'm thinking about being reasonable?
You're in the normal levels of what the situation is called for, not like extreme one way or the other.
Okay.
And not getting emotional.
Not getting emotional?
Maybe he can get confronted and ask him if he has a reason why he's being late. He might have a sick wife at home.
So, I think when I ask this question, people think too deeply, right? Because it's simply, can I be reasoned with? That's what being reasonable is, right? If I sit down with you and I have this opinion about something and you start presenting to me a good, real reason why it's that way, am I so fixed in my own ways, unreasonable, that no matter what you say, I'm not hearing it? So, what would a reasonable person do? I'm going to listen and I'm going to be open to that maybe I might be wrong, even though I know I'm not, because I'm never wrong. Consider if I confront, what will be the outcome? There's the what if. And that happens in multiple stages. You have to be ready for that. The more you are in leadership, the more you have to be. The more you are as a manager, the more you are as head of a household, you have to be ready for what's the possible outcome of this discussion. It's biblical, right? You got to count the cost before you build. All right. To confront the right issue, right? We want to make sure that we're confronting the right thing. Take time to unbundle the problem. Now, what do I mean by unbundle the problem? That's like looking at Brother Smith, and what's the issue? That he's showing up late, but there's more to the problem, okay? The fact that he's showing up late is creating multiple issues. It's not just that people are upset because he's showing up late. What about first-time visitors who saw that, well, Sabbath school starts at a certain time and the place isn't open? Okay? They may never come back again. What about the people that have spent the time preparing materials and they show up ready to get in their classrooms, but they can't get in because Brother Smith didn't open the door? Okay? Then I have to decide, of all of these things, what is it that's really bothering me? Because when we think about confrontation, we wouldn't do it if we weren't being bothered by something. If we didn't care, if it didn't cause something. What is it about this scenario that's bothering me the most? Then I have to kind of bring it down. Now here's a rule of thumb that many books that speak about confrontation say that you have to be able to, in no more than 45 to 60 seconds at the most, be able to express what is bothering you and why you're even having this discussion. If you take longer than that, you've already lost. You've lost them. So that means you have to prepare what it is you're going to say. So like with Brother Smith, so there's multiple things that are going on. I have to show up. If I'm going to be the one to talk to him and not one of the elders, I've got to be there, because when I sit down with him, I can't say, so-and-so told me you've showed up late the last couple times. That's not how we do it. Well, why? Well, because for a couple reasons now he thinks, okay, who's the rat? Right? Who's betraying me? Why would someone talk about me? Why don't they mind their own business? There's all kinds of things that come up in people's heads. But if you sit down and you go, I was there Sabbath at 9 o'clock and you weren't. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit more about my story, because this part is important. To be successful in confrontation, we've got to have a handle on ourself and our own emotions, right? And really understanding. So in that examine me and master my story part of this, we want to think, what's my motive? Is it because I was raised that no one's ever late, and because I was late it's really upsetting me? Is that my motive? Is my motive, I am so tired of people not doing what I've asked them to do. This is it. I'm drawing the line, and this guy's going to get both barrels. What's my motive? Am I reasonable? Am I contributing to the problem? Now, how might I have contributed to the problem? Well, when we think about this scenario, so I'll tell you how I could have really strongly contributed to the problem. I went to Elder John's and I said, Brother Smith has volunteered to open the building. Could you please get him a set of keys and explain to him what needs to be done? Okay? Can I tell you that that's my mistake? Because I can't confront what hasn't been taught. You cannot confront what has not been taught. And if I have given someone else the responsibility to take care of Brother Smith, I have no idea what Brother Smith said or what Brother Jones said to Brother Smith. I don't know. Brother Jones could have went to him and said, hey, I heard that you're going to open. Here's the keys to the building. If you can be there like around 9, that's cool. All right, you got it? No worries. Soon come. Around 9. To one guy, that was like, this is what he was supposed to do, right? We open up around 9 because that's how people think. We open up around 9, gave the keys, you got it, good. But is that what should have happened? No. What should have happened is the keys are given and it's explained that, listen, make sure that you're there to open up no later than 9 o'clock because people are there waiting. Sabbath school has to be set up. It takes them a half an hour to do it, so it's very important that you're there by 9 at the absolute latest. That's a big difference than, hey, as long as you're there about 9, how did I contribute to the problem? If I'm going to confront him, I've got to make sure that he understood what it was that was expected of him in a right way. Because otherwise, I can't confront. Right? I really shouldn't even get mad at someone unless I know they've been instructed properly and trained and then they neglected the responsibility. Then I can have a different kind of... But I'll tell you what, the first conversation I would have would be to retrain and make sure they really understood, which to me isn't a confrontation at all. It's only a confrontation when emotions run high. When he believed he was doing right. He was told as long as he was there about 9 o'clock, it's all good. What are you getting in my grill for? Right? What are you getting upset at me for? Right? Am I seeing the person as a human being or a villain? How am I viewing them? Because how I view them will determine my attitude when I even talk to them. Does that make sense? Y'all with me? Yes. All right. Okay, so now we're switching over to the during. Let's just review real quick. So before the big issue, the first thing that we do before we confront is what? Without looking at the book. What's the most important thing we could do? Someone said it. Pray. Absolutely. Before we even start thinking about the whole thing, we're going to take it to God, because I'm going to ask God, God, if I'm wrong in this, before I even go down the rest of the way, I want to know. Because I don't want to go at this with the wrong intent. Okay? So I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to ask God, search my heart, God. If there's any wicked way within me, lead me. Psalm 139, the last couple verses. Okay? I want to check myself. Then I'm going to think about what is the one thing that I need to talk to this person about. Not multiple things. And someone will say to me, but Pastor, what if there's lots of issues? Well, I have two answers to that. One, shame on you for letting it be multiple issues. But the other side of it is, then guess what? You have to take one thing at a time. When I've stepped into new churches and things have to be dealt with, and I have someone that on multiple levels things are going wrong, I can't sit them down and go through the whole list of everything that's wrong. I'm going to schedule and meet with them multiple times, and we're going to talk about each thing and work through each thing, right? Because I want them to see that I am an ally, I'm not an enemy. I'm not here to hang you out to dry, so to speak. I'm here to help you become the best you can be. Remember, it's about being redemptive. Okay? All right, so Once we've done those things, this is just a different way of saying it, describe the gap. The gap is the issue. The gap is, I believe this, you believe that. There's a gap. What's the issue? The issue is, Brother Smith, I believe that you are supposed to be there by 9 o'clock at the latest to open the door. Okay? That's the gap. That's the issue. Describe what was expected and what was observed. I can't describe what was observed if it's secondhand. You got me? That means I have to see it. There have been times in the past when an elder has come to me and said, look, I was just standing over there and brother or sister so-and-so did this or this or this. Pastor, you need to take care of that. And I just go, no, I don't. You need to take care of it because you're the one that saw it. Now go over there and handle it. Okay? Again, do we confront in anger? No. If that elder was upset about it, I would say, okay, you need to schedule when you can meet with him or her and have that talk later. You know? Okay. State the facts as you see them. It's like the old saying, just the facts, ma'am. Nothing but the facts. Because someone can't argue with you if you're telling what you saw. This is an opinion. Okay? What I saw was you pulling into the parking lot at 9:20. Plain and simple. Can't argue that, right? Describe the issue without judgment or accusation. So how could I describe that with judgment or accusation? Okay? Don't you care enough to show up on time? You're supposed to be there at 9 o'clock. Is that judgment and accusation all rolled into one? Of course it is. The second I do that, what do you think that person is going to do?
Go on the defensive.
They're going to go on the defensive. Exactly. All their defenses are going to come up. They're going to probably get angry. And now there's no way we're going to have a conversation that's redemptive. I blew that before it ever got started. So at this point, I get to share one of my fatal errors as a pastor. Okay? So, once again, I'm pastoring at Plantation. And we have had 2 services at the time. And typically in between Sabbath school is going on in between services. And typically I would go into my office and just kind of chill out and relax before the next service. I got a knock on the door one Sabbath morning. It's the head elder. He says, Pastor, I need you out in the foyer right away. We have a situation. Well, right there was my first mistake because I followed him. Okay? So we go to the foyer, and here is a mom and her 6-7-year-old daughter. As I'm walking up, I see the daughter has got a clipboard, and she's talking to people, and the mom is standing next to her. I don't know what it is, but as I get close, and I can hear the mom is speaking, saying, would you sign the petition that we want to go back to traditional worship at our church? Okay? And the little 6-7-year-old daughter is putting this thing in people's faces to sign this petition. So let me give a disclaimer first, right? So Plantation had been doing the kind of worship it was doing for many years. This is, people have their opinions. I would much rather have hymns and stuff. This was contemporary with a worship band and da-da-da. Do I have a problem with someone feeling like I'd much rather have this kind of worship than that kind of? No. But do I have a problem with someone standing in the foyer as people are coming in for service, using a 7-year-old child to hold the petition out in front and saying, we want to change the worship to traditional worship? Well, I didn't handle it as well as I wish I would have. Because I looked at the mom and I said, what on God's earth are you doing? Just like that. Maybe with a little more emphasis. What on God's earth are you doing? You and your daughter need to move away from here right now. You cannot be doing this. This is wrong on so many levels. What I said. There just happened to be a lot of people right there. It wasn't my finest moment, needless to say. Could that have been handled much differently? Oh, yes. Much differently, right? So, just so you know, I ended up having to meet, which, by the way, her husband was a very good friend of mine. And he called me up and said, "Brother, can I tell you, you have no idea how badly you messed up." He has 4 daughters, right? That's the youngest, up to teenage, and all of them have declared they're never stepping foot in the church again because the way pastor abused their mom. Whoa. I ended up meeting with that family probably about 4 times over the next month to like throw myself on my sword and my spear and everything else to resolve this and regain their trust and bring everything back, right? So what did I do wrong besides the obvious? Well, the first thing I did wrong was to step outside the door when that elder came to me and said, "Pastor, we got a problem and you need to come." Okay? Because that's the reason why there's elders. That's the reason why there's other leaders. Okay? Someone once told me you never send a 4-star general to handle a circumstance that a sergeant can handle. In other words, as soon as I showed up as the senior pastor and opened my mouth, this thing blew up exponentially bigger. If the elder would have walked up and said, "Listen, this isn't right, you can't do this," probably nothing would have happened. But the fact that it was pastor, it changed everything. Okay? You cannot confront what you haven't seen. Now, granted, I came up and I watched it for a moment. What was the biggest mistake I made that I've already said never, ever, ever, ever do? I was upset. I confronted in anger. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Upset. Okay? Describe the issue without judgment or accusation. So what I certainly could have done in that scenario was to say, "Can I talk to you for a second?" Take mom aside, away from everybody, and have a little discussion right there. You know, lessons learned, right? As someone said, lessons learned are like bridges burned. You only have to cross them once, right? I never did anything like that again. Thank you, Jesus. Okay. Diagnose what's the problem. So this is during, and this is when we're having a conversation. And one of the things that I want to do when I'm having a conversation with this person, crucial conversation, is I want to watch how they're responding to the conversation. When we say watch for safety signs, if I start losing them, if I start seeing that they're getting upset, I don't want to just keep hammering down. All right? There's something that's called using contrasting. All right? So I'm sitting across and we're having this conversation, and as we're talking, I'm noticing that your countenance is changing. You're not looking at me. You're looking down. You're doing this. You know, you're patting your foot. I'm noticing, I'm picking up that you're getting upset. All right? If I keep going, chances are you're just going to get more upset, and at some point this thing is going to disintegrate. Now, here's something that I probably should have said in the beginning. It's really hard to confront, or almost impossible to have that kind of confrontation or crucial conversation with somebody if you don't have a relationship with them. Okay? If I don't know you, it's really hard for me to have a redemptive confrontation, because you're going to like, who are you to talk to me like that? You don't know me. You have no reason to talk to me that way. So we're going to think in terms that there's some level of relationship that exists to be able to effectively have that kind of conversation with somebody. Okay? So the contrasting is based on knowing somebody, and it's simply this. You know, brother, I've seen how you work with the young kids and how you're there and you're on time, and you seem like so enthusiastic all the time. It's cool to see that. Now, I'm not flattering, if you remember when we talked about affirmation, that what I'm saying is truth. I'm saying something to them to kind of get them back connected with me. All right? I'm not using a ploy. I have to speak truth or it doesn't work. I have to speak something that I know about them or it doesn't work. Because it's about, I don't want you to think that I'm your enemy. I want you to know that I'm your ally. And that I'm having this conversation with you because I'm your ally and because I want things to be the best they can be. Both for you, for me, for the ministry, for the family, whatever it may be. Okay? Does that make sense? Right? All right, so end your description of the gap with a simple diagnostic question, and that's, remember, I've taken 30, 45 seconds, a minute at the most. I've described what I saw, just the facts, without judgment, without accusation. Here's just what I saw. And then I'm going to say, so what happened? Talk to me. Am I getting this right? Right? And then listen, listen, listen. Like we talked about in the first session, we go to level 2 listening, which is all about the other person. We want to hear what they have to say, why they're saying it, what's going on. So here's the surprising part of our story. So I'm sitting there with Brother Smith and I'm asking him, and now here's what Brother Smith begins to tell me. That he is a single father with 3 young children under 5. My first thought should have been, why on earth would someone ask him to be the one to open the door? What, are we out of our minds? We set this poor guy up to fail no matter what he did. Listen carefully so that I'm conveying interest. Lean in on the conversation. Use all your good listening skills. Because it's at this point that how you listen can change the outcome of the conversation. If they trust and know that you're on their side, that even though we may have a difference of opinion or we're trying to correct a situation, if I'm fully engaged and I'm really listening to you full on, then it's going to make all the difference in the world to that person. Because it will change people when they know they're being listened to, really listened to. Right? So we've had our discussion, and we understand that here's, first of all, he wasn't trained properly. That has to be dealt with. Secondly, we understand that he's a dad with 3 young kids, and wow, if it's up to me, let's find you another position that maybe you're working with AY at the end of the day, or the last thing we want you to do is be, trying to get up at 8, 7 o'clock, whatever it is, and get the kids. I think this mic, no, I thought it was dying. So we're going to look, here's one of the big mistakes that people do when it comes to these crucial conversations. They've had it, they've done it, but then the follow-through is what solidifies everything, okay? And what does that mean? That we're going to agree on a plan of action that solves the problem. That means we agree, the 2 of us. We come to a conclusion. How are we going to manage this? What does this look like? Determine accountability requirements of the plan, because I'm going to tell you, if there's no one accountable, then chances are, give it a few months and you'll be right back dealing with the same thing again. Right? Who's going to be accountable? Am I going to be the one that's going to, I'm going to call him up. If let's say he's just dug in his heels and he said, no, I want to do this. I'm going to be there. Okay, well, do you need help in learning how to get your kids ready early? Do we have to supply some training for you? Do we need someone to make sure you're up, call you early, get you up? What do we need to do? That's to determine who does what by when, and then who's going to follow up. Chances are, in that scenario, I would put somebody that's going to call and maybe come by and help him, get the kids ready. And I'm going to check in on them. How's this working out? Right? Back to the same idea, who, what, when. It has to be named specifically. Who's going to be responsible for this? Who's following up? What does it look like? Okay? When? When is someone going to make that call? When is someone going to follow up? Again, if you don't do this after, there's a good chance you're just going to end up right back where you were before. Sooner or later, people fall back into the old habits. And listen, ultimately, we're talking about wanting to help people move from a certain behavior or a certain way of doing it to something that's better and something that makes more sense. But we've got to support that change and that growth by the who, what, and when, and how we manage that. Okay, so last looks. Question to everybody. When do we confront? When you're calm. What else? When you're not angry. The inverse. When you've seen it. After you've prayed. What else? How about when you need to? That's the duh. Right? When you need to. Plan the confrontation, find a safe place. I didn't talk too much. Let me talk about safe place real quick. For me, safe place was always neutral territory. In pastoring, when I had to meet with someone and had to have a heart-to-heart about someone's lack of performance or whatever it was, I never did it in my office at the church. For those of you, do y'all remember my office story? Any of you remember that? Right? I told you about my office at Plantation. So, just real briefly, so I first started at Plantation, and I showed up, and the elder takes me to the office, and he does this. He opens the door, and he goes, and here's your office. And inside the office was this beautiful walnut, lawyer's desk, this big, beautiful desk, and this big, beautiful leather back, high back lawyer's chair, and these beautiful bookcases. And he's like, ta-da! Kind of thing, right? This beautiful, right? And I looked, and I took a couple steps, and I went, you know what? Can you take all of that furniture out of there? And he looked at me like, you're kidding, right? You're joking. Yes? I said, no. I want 8 chairs and a small round table in the office because I don't talk to people from across the desk. As soon as you do that, you've set yourself up. It's a power thing. Did you know that in Fortune 500 and up, it's a very common thing that the high-level bosses and supervisors and stuff, their chairs and their desks are elevated by about 3 inches, and the chairs on the other side of the desk are lowered by a couple inches, so that you naturally sit lower than them. And that's a power thing, to gain control over people. Something happened, and oh. So we'll look at the book. That's why I love technology. Well, no, we're going to finish and then we'll take a break. Who said that? Nope, we take a break when we're done. So safe place. It was jokingly said when I was pastoring at Plantation that if you met pastor at his office, it was at Starbucks down the street. That was my office. That's where I met people. Outside. So here's a key thing to know, right? That whenever you have to have a crucial conversation with someone and you think that it might go bad, always meet them in a public place. Always arrange it to be a lunch, to meet at a Starbucks or somewhere public. Why is that? No, not just food. Yeah, there you go. People are going to behave in public. If you get behind a closed door, you never know what they're going to do. Yeah, most of the time. Not always, depending on the person. Okay. Here's another thing that you may be surprised about. Ask permission. So I've arranged with you to meet and said, hey, let's meet at Starbucks. I have something that we need to talk about. First of all, I'm not going to tell you an issue. I'm just going to say, hey, can we meet at Starbucks? And I got a couple things I'd like to run by you, talk with you. It's not a setup. It's like I want neutral ground. I want neutral territory. And we sit down, and what I will say, now listen up, and this may surprise you, but I will say, listen, I have some things I got to talk with you about, and it may be a little upsetting. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with that right now? Because maybe their dog just died. Maybe they, are coming from a really bad day at work, and they're like not in a mood to deal with anything like that. And I'm going to be okay for them to say no, and I'll say, okay, how about we meet the same time next week? Is that good for you? Right? Okay, let's put it down on the calendar right now. So in the situation we were talking about, like you're driving and you have to meet with somebody, and by the time you get there, well, first of all, if it was something that needed to be handled, then it shouldn't be, I'm upset and I got to take care of this. Okay? It should be, I'm not upset and this is an issue that needs to be talked about, and it has nothing to do with whether I'm upset or not. If it's only because I'm upset that I feel I need to talk, that's where we have to do my story and examine, okay, what's going on here? If it's important to me when I'm upset and it's not important to me when I'm not upset, then I got a problem. And it's probably not something that I need to confront someone. Otherwise, it may be something that I say, can we schedule a time to connect and meet? What would be good for you? And I always would say it that way. Pull out my calendar and say, what works for you? I have a couple things I want to run by you I'd like to talk about. And they'll say, well, we can talk right now. No, now's not a good time. Let's do it later. And while I'm there, the inverse is what happens when someone comes flying into your face trying to confront you with something, right? Because can I tell you, that's happened to me at church. You'd be out there in the foyer and someone comes at you, okay? You don't engage them at all, okay? The only thing that you can do is say, first of all, you say, you know what? As soon as I'm done greeting everybody coming out, hang loose and we'll talk. One, that's going to help diffuse them a little bit. And then two, you're going to go over and go, look, let's look at the calendar. When's a good time to meet? Because one, I don't want them having a conversation with me when they're angry. For the same reasons that I know why I don't want to do it when I'm angry. I want them to have time to cool down, to think about what it is. And then maybe they may decide, you know what, Pastor, it's good. I don't even need to talk to you. And I don't push it, and I don't say, no, what was it? If they say they don't need to talk to me, that's good. If it comes back up, that's good too. Okay? Be hard on the issue and soft on the person. Okay? Hard on the issue, soft on the person. Own your feelings and beliefs. Always remember this, and I've said this before in our training. Feelings are just feelings. They're not right or wrong. They're just feelings. If someone ever says to you, you shouldn't feel that way, don't take that. Because that's the worst thing you could ever say. Why can I say to you, you shouldn't feel upset about this? Why not? What gives me the right to tell you you shouldn't be upset about something? Now, if you're acting inappropriately and you're expressing things, I could say, this is inappropriate behavior, but I can't say you shouldn't feel a certain way. The inverse of that is own your feelings. If you're not happy about what somebody is doing, don't be afraid to say in the midst of the crucial conversation, can I just tell you that behavior has really been upsetting to me? It makes me feel really uncomfortable when you act that way. That's legitimate, right? Be honest about your own preferences. I could have said to Brother Smith, when he's saying, no, I want to keep doing this, I could have said, well, my preference is that we find a different position for you. Because I think this is just putting too much stress on you and your family. Right? Will you stop playing with my stuff? Be prepared to listen. That's part of being reasonable, right? Accept confrontation as a normal part of life. Hello? Can we be okay with that? That we have to have these crucial conversations with people and not be afraid to do it, but to prepare it and do it in such a way that we know we're going to be okay. And then finally, we have to be willing to be confronted as well as confront. And this is a big thing for people who are leaders, pastors. We have to create a climate that says, I expect you to come to me when there's an issue, to have a crucial conversation when there's a problem. Because if I hear from someone else that you're upset, I'm going to be upset with you. Right? Can you believe I've done some marriage counseling where one, I won't say whether it was the wife or the husband, but one of them said, I need you to talk to my wife about this issue, something that she's doing. Are you kidding me? You need me to talk to your wife about an issue that you're having in your marriage. What's the matter? Your lip's broken? You can't talk? Right? Why would you come to me and say you need me to do it? And Leviticus 19, 17, and 18, the consummate biblical passage on confrontation. You should not hate your brother in your heart, but you shall reason frankly with your neighbor, lest you incur sin because of him. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. So at the end of your notebook there's a few books that I recommend if you are interested in learning more about being effective in crucial conversations or confrontation. Especially the first two books, especially the first one, Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. Great book. Crucial Conversations is really good too. In fact, the basis of the model that we use in this book is what is taught in Crucial Conversations. Okay, any questions or comments?